Hello, everybody, and a warm welcome here to the Wine with Jimmy YouTube channel. Delighted that you have stopped by for another in the series of wines of Georgia, this wonderful, absolutely fantastic country which is making really exquisite wines from fresh European styles to, of course, Kvevery, orange, and skin contact expressions. It's got a hell of a lot of history. We went through that last time around. And now we're going to look at the climate and weather of the country and specifically looking at a lot of the major regions within Georgia. So let's get rocking. So as I just discussed, second part here on climate and weather. And it's all a free series. All these 17 parts will be available on YouTube. So you can really fully immerse yourselves in everything Georgian and wine related. If you do have any comments, questions, or concerns, please do get in touch. You can comment on this video below. Maybe you've been to the region, maybe you've experienced some of this climate and weather, or maybe you just like the wines. Please do comment below. Make sure you click like and subscribe whilst you are there. You may also wish to be in touch via the world of social media that you see at the bottom of every slide. Okay, so let's have a look at Georgia. There is a map of Georgia, which we went through the location last time around. It sits below Russia. It sits just off the Black Sea. Turkey and Armenia and Azerbaijan are all to the south, where the Caspian Sea will sit just off to the east of this map. Now, it's a real centerpiece connecting really Eastern Europe to the Orient and the Asian side. It's a real diverse area because of that, and the climate and weather is the same. So the diversity here is a lot. There is a real complicated topography here as well, with the layouts of the mountains. I'll show you that. And influences from things like the Black Sea, which sits here on its west, and to a lesser extent, the Caspian Sea, which is off to the east. And of course, with such an area, you're going to get specific microclimates within the regions here. So many regional and local climates will be found here as well, ranging from things like permanent snow and glaciers to kind of humid subtropical conditions, almost like sort of semi-arid from the steppe lands. Now, the Greater Caucasus Mountain Range, which is this kind of all of this area here, which is the natural border in northern Georgia that separates from Russia. This is very important in terms of climate and weather, as it moderates the local climate and serves as a natural barrier against the bitter cold weather that can come from Russia and the north. So that's a real saving grace why people are nestled in the Georgian area, because of that protection that the mountain range will offer. So we can generalize Georgia in terms of climatic areas. We will generalize here really between east and west. So we're going to begin by talking about Western Georgia. So this is everywhere that lies upon the Black Sea. Now, this is what we would classify as a subtropical climate, and it's quite humid due to those locations being close to the Black Sea. You've got high levels of rainfall and you've got that humidity. The warm, moist air moves easily into the coastal lowlands, and that's from, of course, the Black Sea. Now, to compare Eastern Georgia, and that's where we're looking at areas here, specifically places like Kakheti, for example, where we find the majority of the vineyards. This is much drier than the West, with lower rainfall and lower humidity. So therefore, there's more consistency in terms of grape growing. The dry continental climate here will have very large diurnal differences and also very large seasonality, continentality. You'll find hot summers and you'll find those mild to quite cold winters. Now, the influence of the Black Sea is less here on this side, and that's because where you've got the Greater Caucasus Mountains, which is what really separates Georgia from Russia, and you've got the Lesser Caucasus Mountain Range, which separates most of Georgia from Turkey, you have a connecting range here, which is called the Liki Range. And the Liki Range is important because it does act as a natural barrier. So you can imagine, I'm going to draw an arrow here in red, in fact. So you've got this weather coming in here from the Black Sea, this humidity and this rainfall, but it is stopped at this point where you've got the Liki Range. So let me just put that in black for you. I'll do this in a black line. Here we go. So just sort of down in this area. So that's its natural barrier, and that's why we have much lower rainfall in the eastern area, and of course lower humidity as well. This land bridge between the Greater and Lesser Caucasus Mountain Range. So let's really drill down into some of these specific areas. So first of all, the Kakheti area, which sits right over to the east. Now this ranges from a dry subtropical to kind of moderately humid climate. The rainfall, as I mentioned here, is fairly low. You've got around 600 to 800 millimeters. Now, in the grand scheme of things, that's kind of an average rainfall for most vineyards. But we have hot and very typically dry summers. We have temperate winters as well. And it's generally drier as you go southeast down into Kakheti. So let me just scribble that away for you as well. So as we come this way, it generally gets a little bit drier. As you go the opposite way towards the northwest, of course, you are therefore kind of going a bit closer to the Black Sea, and humidity and rainfall will increase. It's pretty much following the direction of a famous river, which is the Alazani River. And many of the key PDOs here in Kakheti are situated along this very important river. Now, the hazards throughout the Kakheti would be hail due to the almost subtropical conditions we have, and very damaging hailstorms can occur 1 to 3 times per year, typically in spring and in autumn, book-ending summer. Despite being less humid than the western parts of Georgia, you will still see fungal diseases, specifically during veraison. And climate change is increasing the risk of springtime humidity in this area. You'll actually notice in the Kakheti, people are identifying sites a little bit more higher altitude as well, as the problems tend to be more closer to the Alazani River. Okay. And there you are, just sort of discussing that. So we've gone through those hail. There's a picture here of a vineyard in Georgia with those hailstones you can see, which of course leads to things like leaf shredding. And of course, if there are berries formed, it can lead to destruction of those berries through hitting them and of course then splitting them. The biggest issue really is what follows. Often there's a lot of botrytis with the moisture, which is around after hail, which causes, of course, a lot of rot. Okay, so we are now talking about the Kartli area and identified there in red. And there are many different climates in this area, but it's kind of typically a moderate warm steppe climate, which is that sort of semi-arid, semi-desert conditions, and it's moderately humid. You'll find hot summers here, and most of the rainfall is in May, and the least amount of rainfall is in February. But you'll see the rainfall here, once again, kind of wraps around the amount that you would get in Kakheti, being around 500 to 1,000. Of course, there are areas closer to the Black Sea, which will experience more of that rainfall. Okay, let's go over to Imereti next, and you can see we've highlighted it here on the map, sitting in a really interesting location. It is once again bordered in the north by the Greater Caucasus Mountain Range. the lesser in the south, but there's actually a specific ridge here called the Meskheti Ridge, which is this very famous area, which is its border on the south, and then the Liki mountain range here, which connects the Lesser and Greater Caucasus, is what actually is on its eastern side. So it's climatically diverse here, but it's fairly humid continental and sort of a humid subtropical climate. And it's cooler and wetter than Kartli and Kakheti, which lie on the other side of the Liki mountain range, with mild winters and hot summers. The Black Sea will have an effect here. It has a moderating effect on the temperatures in both summer and winter, and it actually allows for later ripening of the varieties here. The effect of this later ripening actually decreases as you go east in Imereti, of course, towards the Liki mountain range and further from the Black Sea. And the altitude and distance from Black Sea really do affect the local climates in this area. Right, Racha-Lechkhumi is next. So Racha is mountain highlands, which has winters which are typically long and cold, with permanent ice and snow in the high mountains. The January average temperatures here are -1 and -2, and July is only around 19 to 21 degrees Celsius. Lechkhumi, the climate here is more variable, and it's defined by altitude. The lowlands closer to the Black Sea are more humid and subtropical, and higher altitudes can see permanent ice and snow in that area. There you are, just a picture of the permanent ice and snow that one can find in this area on the mountains. So quite dramatically different to everything we've been discussing so far. Then we have the Guria Samagrelo area, which of course lies on the Black Sea. This is humid, it's subtropical, but it does have a mountainous eastern side, which is a little bit more continental. The lowlands of Guria, which are at about 200 meters of altitude, are humid, winters are mild, and summers are hot. And we often have, coming off the Black Sea, some of these higher, more intense wind patterns as well. Now, Samagrelo is more humid and subtropical, and the slopes approach the Upper Caucasus up the top will actually give you some good possibilities for grape growing here. Altitude, lower rainfall, and the dry eastern winds here reduce humidity in this area. Ajara is next. So this is the area which is the coast of the Black Sea, near the Lesser Caucasus mountain range. Most of this is forest. It's about 2/3 forested, this landscape. It's humid, it's subtropical, particularly across the coastal areas. There's a lot of rainy weather here, but there's also really good sunshine in spring and summer. It's some of the highest amounts of rainfall in Georgia and one of the wettest temperate regions in the northern hemisphere. September and October tend to be the wet areas right here. The interior, so going towards the north and also the east of this area, is more coastal mountains and more lowlands. And you will find that there are some grapes grown in this area, but it's not a principal area for grape growing. Winter temperatures are average at around 4 to 6 degrees. Notice how that's a lot different than Racha-Lechkhumi up here. Racha that has, -1, -2 in January and in January and February time. And we also have another part here, which is called Abkhazeti or Abkhazia, which has a proximity to the Black Sea. And it has this kind of more mild climate, despite the northerly latitude, very close to this. The Caucasus Mountains greatly moderate the climate as they shield the region from cold winds of the north. Now we move across to Meskheti. So this would be considered one of the most continental parts of Georgia. It's in sort of moderate, dry, steppe-like conditions, which is mountainous, sort of arid to mountainous climate. Now, this is going towards the Turkish border. Of course, it lies on the Turkish border, and it's an area where a lot of viticulture is being rekindled, certainly with a lot of terraced vineyards being reclaimed of these very old vines. You'll find exceptional age of vines here, go well into 200, 300, 400 years. Most of the rain here falls in summer, and it's one of the driest winemaking regions in the whole of Georgia. 400 to 500 millimeters. So irrigation is something that is considered in this area. And there you are. We're just having a look at some of the terraced vineyards, which are quite wonderful. The winter can be quite distinct here. Being very continental, you'll find winter frosts being specifically damaging. And vines here traditionally were buried in those winter months. Terracing like this helps to aerate the vineyards, and you'll tend to find better conditions to protect against frost in those. And a little bit on climate change first as well. Just mentioning that the fact that there are glaciers, of course, which are permanently found in the Greater Caucasus mountain range. With global warming, these glaciers are actually retreating by a significant amount per year, sometimes saying 5 to 25 meters, which sounds very significant. The winter snow line has moved up from about 1,200 to 1,500 meters to about 1,800, 2,000 meters. So it's sneaking up with the effects of climate change. Humidity in places like Kakheti is increasing through climate change, certainly in spring, which causes higher risks of fungal diseases. And winemakers are looking for different vineyard sites to counteract temperature. Remember, I mentioned this when we were discussing Kakheti earlier. Many are actually siting grapes now at higher altitudes, and that's because of climate change. Okay, well, that brings me to the conclusion of climate and weather for Wines of Georgia. Please do join me as we'll talk about the fascinating topography of Georgia. We've discussed it a bit on this section, but we're going to actually look at a 3D Earth video, and we're going to put it into a bit more context for you, because there's nothing better than looking at the actual mountains that really do dominate parts of this landscape. As always, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please do get in touch. You can do so by emailing. You can also get in touch by commenting on this video below. Make sure you talk to us about your experience of Georgian wine, if you've been to the region in any of these parts, or maybe experienced some of the climatic conditions that we have been discussing. Make sure you click like and subscribe, and you can also get in touch by any of the social media you see at the bottom of every slide. But until next time, please come and see me in the UK if you are here to have potentially a glass, or a bottle. I've been Jimmy Smith. Ciao for now. Bye-bye.